Hey everyone, how's it going? Glad to see you all here, and we're going to be starting a brand new World Creator version, or at least an update to the World Creator version that we've been kind of teasing for a while now. Most of the stream's gonna hopefully dive around rivers. I think there are some people that might need some help with understanding how to create some of those between the procedural aspect and the custom aspect, because there's a little bit of a difference between the two, because there's a lot that you can do manually that the procedural aspect may not do for you. But first, we're going to be showcasing a little bit of this landscape. I made this one. It didn't take me that long to make this, to be honest, especially with the brand new snow simulation, which I'm very happy with. It's still in the works. The simulation that is, they're still working on some tweaks and things, but the devs are in the stream or in the chat. So if you have a question related to snow simulation or anything regarding World Creator, feel free to ask in the comments and chat, and we'll be sure to answer that as speedily as possible when I see it, of course. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I'm glad to do another one of these. This will be the first live stream that is dedicated to just World Creator and not any other software yet. I know last time I streamed Dash, a great plugin for Unreal, and the streams before that was all about taking World Creator landscape into Unreal a couple different ways, and specifically the whole landscape material creation process. So if you haven't seen those, they're very long, but they're very informative. So today I'm going to try and keep this to a very reputable length of hopefully an hour and a half, 2 hours max, to really hone in and focus on the topic at hand, which is everything involved around sort of hydro, water, snow, seas, and lakes, all those type of simulations and designs that we can kind of at least get you to a state of something like this. So this terrain that you see in front of you has a combination of all those things. Has a river system, a snow system, has a fluid simulation system to generate these lakes that you see right here, these two little lakes. The river system also has sort of lake settings built in, but it's not entirely going to create lakes for you. I would definitely be do lakes more manually using a fluid simulation or the where is it at? The shape layer and polygon layer. Kind of mold and create your own custom lake, and then you can do rivers into that. So one thing that I want to dive into real quick is I've started back up working on the handbook here. Of course, I've teased this once before, and I'm going to make this document available for free to everyone on the Patreon page so that you can see everything. But what I've started, of course, I've teased this before, kind of walks you through landscape sizing, walks you through importing a height map, rescaling a height map, understanding the Z-scale factor, which is still so important. So many people still get this wrong. And so next is the height map, but the one aspect that I am currently working on now is the material creation process in Unreal, going through pretty much step by step through the process of creating a couple variations to landscape materials inside Unreal Engine 5 and trying to explain some different variations, pros and cons to different aspects. So I will have this document available. It's available to the people that are invited on to my personal Discord right now to kind of give some feedback. Of course, you can probably go to it by copying the link up here. But I'll have this available hopefully later this week on Patreon so that you can grab that link. And again, this version is going to be free. I'm going to be creating a studio version that's more tailored to studio environments that is probably going to have a paid part to it. I haven't fully decided, but I just wanted to throw that out there because once I get the two different materials that I wanted to finish up, I'll share it with you guys. And I think that's going to be a really viable document, especially for everyone that is new to Unreal Engine landscapes and all that stuff. So the version that I'm running right now is 2024.3 preview something. There's not an official build to this yet to everybody. So you will get this, and I'm sure World Creator in the chat will assure you that you'll get this at some point in time soon. Let's see what you guys are saying. Gotcha. Snow, rivers, lakes, and seas. All right. So one thing about this is the only thing that's going to be new in this particular build that is not in the other builds is the snow simulation. Things like rivers, lakes, beaches, and all that stuff you can pretty much do now. Although I think there is a tease for a beach design filter coming up later this year to kind of help do beaches a little bit more accurately. I don't know if I'm going to be touching as much on today with beaches as I would like, because I think beach design is a very particular, that can go for a very long time. And I actually already have a live stream that I did a couple years ago that's specifically targets beach design, understanding how beaches work in the real world ecosystems. But I think, I can't remember what version World Creator that I use that in, but it really breaks down how everything with beaches. So if you use that knowledge in this particular version of World Creator, hopefully that'll help you out a little bit. So let me bring up my notes right up here so I don't get lost. All right, everyone hear me okay? Everyone doing well? I think the last time I had to do some adjusting, show us the magic of World Creator. Yes, thanks for being here, JB Creative. Akin Maya, Laurent, Mark O. Mark O, you're usually in 2 different things at the same time. Glad you guys are liking World Creator. It's getting better and better for sure. There's no doubt about that. Can I export low poly version of the mesh? I would say, I guess it depends on the kind of low poly mesh you're wanting to do. But yeah, you can take even this landscape right here and export it at a different precision level, which would be low poly. First thing I wanted to run through before we dive into the actual snow stuff is, if you haven't played around with some of the stuff that they've announced in the changelog recently, it's really fantastic update the last go around. For example, right here we have a fast texture renderer. I work in this a lot, especially with texturing, because the rendered view, sometimes these shaded areas are kind of hard to tell what you are, what you're coloring. And the fast texture render view really holds this really nicely, as well as the matte cap render. So I do most of my sculpting or any filter design or simulation design I'll do here. For example, not that one, but the fluid simulation here. And I'll just make sure this is fluid and snow so you don't get confused. So like the fluid simulation, everything I do with it is in this matte cap view. You see I can move the fluid around however I want, put that back somewhere right there. And of course the snow simulation right through here, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But one cool thing about the matte cap view is you can change the type of matte cap that you want. I believe it is in graphics. Yeah, so under graphics, the matte cap render here, you can change the color and the background color, but you can also change the different types of render styles. So depending on what type of matte cap version you want to see, interesting color here, all metallic, green. So whichever, this one's not too bad. It's really diffused a couple different ways. So however you want to see the land, that one's kind of nice. However you want to see the landscape, the matte cap view is great for sculpting, and it's really fast. I mean, GPU, we're at, you can see over 300 frames per second in matte cap. Texture view is also over 300 frames per second, which is really great. High quality render though goes down to a little less than 60, which of course it's the path tracer, obviously. And let's see here. The great thing about the last change log that came out is all the different noises. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but for example, let's zoom in onto this lake right here. I believe it is this right here, that color. Yes. So I have this color tied to a simulation layer. So distribution, simulation, and it's tied to fluid. But it's also has a wherever. Oh, wrong one. This one, this snow that's on top of the ice. Yes. You can see here's the ice color, simulated ice color underneath. I added a sort of snowy color on top of that, but distribution wise, It is a noise. It's rigid, but it is if I go to distribution, noises. So all your distributions are now organized by noises, layers. Layers are anything like, you want to distribute based on rivers or polygons or paths or simulations. And terrain is everything that is distributed based on the terrain's physical shape, like, slope, roughness, rocks, height, cavity, and all that stuff. But look at all these noises, all of these different types of noises. And the one that I chose for this was rigid. And if I were to go to, whoops, never mind. Apparently that crashed. Hold on one moment. Hold on one second. Nope, not wrong one. Hold on one second, guys. No, I picked the right file. Here we go. Oh, there's a new. That's something that I didn't know. World Creator, what's the new renderer that you're talking about? I don't even think I knew that. Anyway, so the heat map kind of crashed on me there. No big deal. But one cool thing is, let's go to global. We can see these as well. Under classic, there's a few other ones like furrows. We're going to touch on this one a little bit, but noise. This is a great one. You're going to be able to choose between several different noises right down here where it says noise. You can choose all of these different types of noise patterns. Of course, the simulations are all running. Let's go to MatCap and turn off filters and turn off simulations and shapes. Okay. So this is cool. So we can choose value and we can choose the amplitude, the frequency of this noise. So this is kind of our own custom noise shaping. And these noises are available in distribution layers, as well as shape layers. We can even do a shape layer, go to procedural, and I think we can do noise there too. If I'm not mistaken. Wave, there's all these different noise levels. Simplex, a really cool one is billow, amplitude. It's kind of trippy. And phaser, this one's really cool. If I wanted to change the frequency up a little bit, there's some really cool striations. Let's see what these filters do that I applied to it. That's pretty nifty. Simulations, shape. Maybe not the shape. All right, and let's get out of here. Yeah, so this is really cool. Just real quick, different variety. Super cool. Maybe we change the type of fractal it is. Let's go back to this. Let's change the octaves. Make it a little bit smoother. Linearity. I mean, there's so many different things to these noises that you can change, which isn't the, here we go, which isn't the focus that I wanted to jump to on this today's stream. But I really wanted to point out the noises. I thought you were going to go this terrain from 0 to, yeah, I'm going to be showing the process of the snow stuff at first, but like I said, with that terrain that I had, I am going to show, I'm going to give that terrain to you in the samples. So in the Discord, that terrain that I showed you that I had, I'll do that in the samples as well. But yes, we are going to start a brand new file here in just a moment. I wanted to make sure that I covered all of the changelog stuff real quick. There are several different things. Of course, one aspect that I'm not going to touch today that's really cool for shaping is we can load in a model. I haven't done this yet. I'm not going to do this today, but you can load in a model. Say if you have a mesh of another terrain, or if you have Blender's monkey head that you can put in here. You can put in a box, whatever model shape, and it's going to basically stamp that model onto the terrain, which is pretty cool. So we'll basically try to touch on that at some point in the future. The model aspect is really cool. Can you imagine putting together a detailed map of Middle Earth from the Lord of the Rings in this program? It would be insane. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't do something like that. Maybe you have you want to design the landscape of Rohan, or design a city around Osgiliath, and you create the river system right through the town. Of course, that would be an insane build. But yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. Your whole limitation is what effort or imagination and the amount of time you put into it is going to be equal to the amount of detail you're going to get out of it. So without further ado, let's jump into showcasing a little bit of the snow simulation, if you guys are cool with that. Let's see, what do you think is worth selling landscape made with World Creator or on 3D asset stores? Because I love to make landscapes like you, but I'm afraid that the market is too saturated. I think, and I've thought of this too, I think you need to make some landscapes that are, obviously they have to be of pretty good quality, but you know, maybe make a package of different assets of a theme, like create different biomes. Or if you create a package of alpha maps or a package of different meshes, there's so many different things that you can probably put forward to the 3D market. Cause I know there's a lot out there, but there's also a lot of bad landscapes. There's a lot of good landscapes. So making your landscapes unique and making the marketing around your package that you're wanting to create unique so that people can see it, I think would be really good. Yeah, extremely high quality terrains are hard to find. I think especially in the gaming industry, I would imagine it's fairly easy to create a bunch of different things just because the detail level, you have to think about the density of the landscape is not going to be as high in most games. In the film industry, I can probably guarantee you there's a lot of need for really high quality, dense landscapes around a given scene, and then having multiple or wider densities as the scene grows. So like a distant vista, they could probably do on their own, but they need something that merges into a really close-up scene. So if you have good skill to make something that's really high quality detailed up close where all the cameras are, that can be put into like one of Unreal Engine's volumes, for example, those really close scenes that people are doing in the big buck applications, that's the kind of landscapes I think people would really gravitate towards. Most look rather like generic CG mountains. Yeah. And I think also texturing is key. I mean, having a landscape detailed with the physical mesh, I think is fairly easy, but having realistic texturing is what's really going to make the difference. In film, we often use LiDAR data over purely procedural approaches. Yeah, because one great thing about LiDAR data is you want to scan an area as a reference even for when you're going to film on set. You know, like a film on a certain location. You'll want to have LiDAR of that exact location that you're wanting a camera crew to be at, so that if there's any CG effects, you can do all that in post too with the landscape, and you can build that landscape vista. Like you're creating a landscape up close, but you're also creating a landscape that's distant. Norbert, that's a good question. I personally am not entirely sure how to make yourself stand out for the film industry as a beginner. I guess just try to keep up with posting things to different artists' websites like ArtStation or maybe or that's a good question. I'm probably not the best person to ask about that because I've done some things for film, but it's very rare. All right, let's dive into the snow simulation. The answer to that is absolutely yes. Hey, Aaron. Nice to see you here. Welcome. All right, the first thing I want to do is obviously we're going to start off with showcasing a little sneak peek of the snow simulation. It's not going to be the primary goal for the day, but it's going to be a little sneak peek. But the first thing I want to dive into is changing the color of our terrain so that we can see the snow. And I will go ahead and do simulation layers plus icon, and the simulation type here is snow. So the snow, I'm going to go to matte cap render here. The snow simulation is more about changing the physical mesh of the terrain than it is about coloring the terrain. Obviously, here in render view, I use the snow simulation, but it's covered the whole terrain in this. It's still gray. It's not white. So in order to see the snow simulation, you either have to go to matte cap, because you can see right here, it has smoothed out areas where snow has gravitated onto. But if you really want to see it for texturing, go add a color, down to distribution, do a layer, simulation. We'll do this, our snow sim. Under simulation for distribution layer, we'll choose the snow sim, basically. And you can see that right here in texture view or render view. So here is essentially the snow simulation colorized. We're going to look at it in matte cap view first. The auspicious Aaron has shown up. How have you been doing, Aaron? If any of you didn't know, Aaron Westwood here is your popular creator of the I Am film. He created all of those fantastic terrains for the I Am film. So that's still a very popular video, no doubt. All right, so for the snow sim, like I said, everything is based on the simulation mesh, adding or changing and sculpting the mesh of the terrain. You see that the top cap here is quite soft. It's actually adding volume of snow to the caps of these mountains or these ridges. And all these crevices where the snow is collecting or avalanches are going down, it's collecting in these little valleys. But you can control all of that, of course, by all of these settings. And I'm going to get to some of them. We're going to skip the global settings right now. This is sort of the global parameters that control everything as a whole, but it will become very important here shortly. The one setting I think you need to understand is right here, this powdery unstable ratio. Right now it's set at 50%. So to understand, there's two different simulations happening. There is a sort of stable simulation, which is the powdery option right here. And there's the unstable, which is the avalanche stuff. So if you have it fully powdery, change it to 0, and perhaps increase the strength, you can add more snow on top of this mound. But if you want there to be some avalanches, or if you want that snow to not stick as well, you increase that ratio to be a little bit more unstable. And you can see the snow has not affected or not piled up onto the terrain at the top here as much, but it's now collecting down here in the bottom. Or this is a better one to see. You see it's collecting down here in the bottom of this crevice. It's still shiny up top because there's still some amount of snow that's sticking to the top, but the majority of that snow is being pushed down. So if you see I move this left, most of that snow is sticking on the ridge lines here, and I moved this ratio to the right, you can see that snow is being pushed down. Of course, you can change these however you want. There's going to be some give and take on a lot of practicing on getting this exactly where you want it. So let's put this right in the middle. All right, melting and temperature. We're going to skip this one for now because I want to focus on these next two first. So I mentioned that there is powdery and unstable, or stable and unstable. So the powdery option of this ratio is controlled by diffusion. Diffusion is going to be basically controlling how much of that powdery snow lands on the terrain. And you can, the speed sort of affects that rate. You can see how much more snow has added to this range here. But what you need to understand is the rest angle. The powdery snow is basically going to begin at 45 degrees and move up. That's where the simulation is going to occur, is between 45 and 90 degrees. The speed at which is just how well, I believe, you guys, the developers in the chat can guide me on this, but it's just at how well that snow is sort of generation is producing for the powdery aspect within this rest angle. So if I were to lower the rest angle, say to something about 20 degrees, you can see all that snow has shifted further down the slope here. So from about 20 degrees up, there's more powder that's going to occur. If I were to reduce the speed, you can see most of that powder is going to remain near the top. So it's just sort of, you can see that's slightly moving just a little bit. Let's see, I have a question. All these maps are made at real scale, like 1:1. In this program, yes, everything is 1:1. So for example, this terrain here is 1024 by 1024. Real scale doesn't mean anything with height map terrains. You can decide for yourself how many meters each pixel stands for. Yeah, so for example, since we're on this topic, precision, even though it says 1 meter, so every meter or every pixel in this particular landscape is a meter. And you can choose every half meter or every quarter meter, but you don't have to do that. Whatever you do in here is to scale, but say you want to assume that this is twice the size that it is, you can export this at 1 kilometers by 1 kilometers and still decide to put it in another application and scale it however you want. If you want the height of this, right now it says 150 meters. If you want that to be 300 meters in another application, just multiply the Z factor by 2 and you'll get 300 meters. So there's a lot of custom control that you can really do that. All right, let's get back to the snow sim. All right, so I know that the descriptions I'm giving to you are kind of vague, a little vague when it comes to what these are going to be, but I'm definitely going to have a dedicated tutorial that really breaks down snow and all of its settings whenever everything is fully finalized in terms of ready for you guys to use. But these are just some of the descriptions that I understand based on what I've done thus far. All right, so diffusion, that's all controlling the powdery snow. And if we go back to the fast render view and maybe change the angle, you can see that snow angle begins at 3 degrees and goes up. So it's all that powdery. If I want the powdery snow to be pretty prominent, it's going to be pretty prominent. Let's say speed at 100 doesn't do much, but let's go back to the defaults. All right, avalanches is everything that's being controlled by the unstable ratio. So this unstable ratio, if we want more avalanches than powdery snow, we increase that, say, let's just increase this to around 0.8, and then maybe increase the rest angle a little bit lower. There we go. So how this works is avalanches also have their own probability. How often would they occur? If they don't ever occur, then it's 0. And what you're left is just whatever the diffuse speed is here. So whatever the amount that normal powder snow happens in these crevices. But if you want to have some unstable snow, then we can just increase that that avalanche probability. And things like speed also affect it, how fast that avalanche is going to occur. And the viscosity, we know all about that. But the rest angle, everything that it's just that the angle where once the avalanche occurs, at what slope angle will the avalanche decide to start slowing down or stop? So that's basically how this works. You can kind of see it right here. This avalanche is not very powerful. Indeed, but you get the idea. Each element of an avalanche can be controlled, and of course, you don't have to completely use all the procedural elements. You can use, especially when we go to color. Don't forget, you also have distributions of all these. So if you want the snow to only occur in certain areas, you can. Simulation layers. I think World Creator can maybe answer this or not. Distribution for simulation layers, I believe, will occur at some point. Not entirely sure. Our Discord has, yeah, there's some good examples or good samples in the World Creator Discord for this as well. And that one landscape that I said I'm going to put, I'll put in the samples there as well. Real-time performance, yeah, for sure. Yes, so perfect. Thanks for answering that. So distribution for simulation layers is planned, but not there yet. So when it is here, say you want to start that simulation, which you can kind of do a little bit right here. This is really cool. You can just do this for the time being because this is a simulation, so you can control the area that this occurs in. And let's set this, where is this? Back to 50-50. So that's one aspect of it. Oh, also, if you want to see this simulation not in the matte cap view, because like I said, it's going to make it really colorized. In the fast texture render, you can see some of this snow is kind of bleeding off the edge a little bit. If this is confusing and you want to really see what the simulation is doing for you, in the materials where you have the snow under the simulation layer, you have this range, so you can control the range at which the simulation or the material is painting on the sim. If you take this lower value and put it at like 0.99, you can really see the boundary of where the simulation is sort of one-to-one. It's hard cut there. Let's say currently you would use the simulation mask to paint the areas you want the simulation to be applied to. Yes, that's a good point. So that's kind of what it is here. So you use the simulation mask. I want the simulation to begin in this area. It's just like the, let's do another simulation. This one will be fluid, and I'll make another color. Let's say this color is a little bit of that blue color. And then for its distribution, I'll choose layer, simulation, and I'll choose that new simulation layer that I've made. So for this simulation, the fluid simulation, if I were to pull this in, even though that this area box is not anywhere where it's being painted, this is a fluid simulation. So all the fluid is being generated within this box, and it's running down the hillside into this area. So that's how I created the lakes essentially. So I just said, hey, I wanted a fluid spawn essentially right here, and it flows into the resulting areas. Same thing for the snow. I want snow to be generated within this boundary, and let the simulation kind of run. Good. Answering those questions nicely. Does everything I have said thus far make sense? I hope it does. The snow sim, like I said, I'm going to have way more involved with the snow sim pretty soon. But there's one aspect to the snow sim that I think is really cool that I wanted to showcase, which was the melting aspect. So melting controls both the powder and unstable simulation already, or it controls the rates for both of them. So say I want there to be a little bit less snow, the temperature rises. So we'll increase the strength here for the melting up just a little bit, and you can see a little bit snow is occurring. But if we really want to make it melt even more, we'll just decrease this temperature slider. So the temperature slider here is based on height, because you think about it in terms of when you look at mountains, snow is going to be it's going to be a lot colder in the higher elevations than it is the lower elevations. So this temperature slider is sort of relative to the middle axis of the landscape's physical mesh. So I'm assuming 0 here represents in height that 0 line from the min and max. So my min and max is between 38 and 206. So this temperature of 0 represents dead middle between the min and max. And then when you decrease the melting, it's going to reduce sort of the height range. So you can see how if I'm increasing the temperature, which sounds counterintuitive. I feel like this should be reversed. If you're increasing this temperature slider, it gets hotter. You decrease this temperature slider, it gets colder. But just know that by shifting this, you can shift the melting rate. And you can see there that if I were to cover the entire terrain here, everything is still, the simulation of the snow is still there. For example, the avalanche, you can see how much snow is down here from all the avalanche. If I were to increase that rest angle, well, avalanche is very finicky. Let's do all these as their given rates. Maybe diffusion is a little bit less. Rest angle is a little bit higher. There we go. You can see the avalanche is occurring right here. Most of the avalanche is going to be in the physical connections or the physical mesh. Let's see. Oh yeah, vegetation sounds fun. The AI thing is planned for vegetation growth as well. We are already on it and trained a pretty cool network for it. Oh yeah, that's really cool. Is there any feature to add LiDAR scanned or scan models with map tiler? Well, I don't know if there's going to, World Creator will have to answer that. You'll have to, I would imagine if you have a LiDAR scan, I don't know if there's going to be like a dedicated LiDAR file, but what I can imagine is if you had a LiDAR scan that you've generated a mesh from, then you can import a model with the shape layer here, model. And if you've got a LiDAR model, you can import that model here as a stamp onto the terrain. Or if you happen to have the software to take a LiDAR scan and generate a height map from that, then that would be the resulting factor as well. So I think there's a couple ways you can probably do that. It will be in an addition. All right. Hope we will. You mean real-time processing? Why not? Ooh, there we go. Wow, you guys are on a topic that is all beyond me right now, so that's perfectly fine. Okay, so Snow Sim, yeah, that's one great thing that we can do about it, but here's another aspect that I think is really cool. So we haven't touched on the global settings yet. So like I said earlier, the global settings will control sort of the main output procedural element of this. Let's go back to our defaults here on all these elements so that we can really see what's happening here. So think about how much you want to control the sun. Let's take the precipitation is the amount of snow that occurs. So if I were to increase the strength, there's more precipitation that happens in the snow area. The spawn amount here at the bottom is how much snow is being how many rounds of snow is going to be generated. So increase the snow amount, more snow is added as a whole for both the powder and unstable versions. But the precipitation is about the buildup of the snow. So if I were to have it at a little bit low here, you can see that there's just a little bit of snow, but where the snow is building up at in the areas, I can increase this. Same thing with the temperature. If I want to reduce the temperature in some of the areas, see that temperature at the top is getting less and less. But the sun temperature and temperature offset is probably one of the cooler aspects to really customizing this, I think. If I were to reduce the temperature offset, it sort of controls both the powdery and unstable together. If I increase this above 100, you see it's controlling both the avalanche and the powder snow at the same time. But one cool thing is the temperature also, or the melting factor also has a relation with the sun direction. Let me see if I can't reduce this. Let's see, increase that. Melting strength. All right, so the sun temperature, let me lower this a little bit. All right, one thing that's neat is the direction of the sun. So this sun temperature, depending on which direction the sun goes. So if I have a sun temperature of 0, which is what I have right now, that means that the sun is having 0 effect on the snow. If I have a sun temperature of 50, you see, depending on which direction the sun is, as naturally as you would think, depends on which part of the snow is being melted away. So let's lower this back down. Let's say we don't want as much snow to melt in the shaded areas. There we go. All right, so let's go to Scene Render. And as I rotate the sun angle in the horizontal position, you see the snow is changing. Of course, you can change a lot of aspects to the snow however you want, because there is some snow happening in the sun areas that you can remove or not remove. So this is one of the things that I was able to create that one landscape from, is I can basically manipulate where I want more snow to be based on even the sun angle here, or this sun angle. It's all in the horizontal areas, not the vertical. So it's one thing that you can do is in for the snow color here, if you want a little bit more of that snow to be removed from the sun angle, under distribution, terrain, you can add sun direction. And then for this, you can add subtract. So now snow only in the direction of the, or only in the opposite direction mesh-wise of the sun is going to be generated. So anywhere where I rotate the sun, snow will basically populate in all of the faces that the snow or that the sun is not touching. Add some erosions. I'm getting there. All right, so this is just simple right now. So let's add a couple filters. Let's go back to the matte cap view, add a wide erosion here. You can see that the right here is an area where avalanche has fallen into. Erosion is really going to help spruce up these areas a whole lot. Let's see. Rocky plateaus. All right, so this is a good example right here. So erosion helps really guide that snow a little bit more to where you want it. I'm gonna take off that, where was it, that sun direction real quick. There we go. So you can see erosion really, I meant to add erosion earlier, but I really wanted to showcase what the snow simulation kind of does at its base. Of course, we can add some more precipitation if we want. Say, and you don't have to do it based on the sun angle. Say I want the sun to really come this direction. But for the snow sim, we can say, hey, we don't want to use the global sun. We want to use our own custom direction. So here's the sun north. You can rotate the angle of the sun for that simulation. Of course, remember earlier how for the snow color, we made the distribution 0.99 to 1. If we say change this to 0.55, we can kind of blur these edges just a little bit more. So maybe helping that realism occur just a bit more. How many people are working on World Creator? I don't know what he says. A few. I'd say it's just about a handful. Very little amount of people are working on it, which is why any things like this snow simulation is just so fantastic to see. Watch the sun direction, how it affects the snow melting. Yeah, exactly, which is really cool. So use global sun there. Turn the, where am I back here? Render, turn the sun this way. And we've added some snow here in the nooks and crannies. Let's maybe change the rest area or rest angle to our avalanche. You can really see it now. So right here at a rest angle of 89.27, which means that snow is going to fall off 90 degrees and land in 89 degrees. if we lower the the rest angle, you can see more of the avalanche is coming down. Maybe set this to about 30 degrees. There we go. So in real time, we saw the avalanche is stopping roughly around 30 degrees. Maybe lower its speed. We can increase the speed so there's more avalanche that's occurring. Perfect. And one thing I like to do, especially with snow, is you don't have to adhere to snow on, what am I trying to say? On everything where the distribution for the simulation is. I sometimes still like to do slope, and I will subtract. So I don't want snow to occur on 90 degrees and 85 degrees, range of 2. So you can see here, if I were to lower the slope range just a smidge, more snow is being removed. So the simulation is happening, but in terms of painting, I'm controlling where the snow occurs. Of course, I want it to be at 90 because I don't want snow to adhere to a full 90 degrees. We'll say 85 and 5 degrees. Make sure. There's still a little bug with the smoothing factors of this. All right, so now anywhere the snow is between 85 and 90, it's not going to occur. Maybe we'll make this 2, a little sharper. Based on CPU calculation, not GPU, better and faster. Do you material layer like color from top of landscape and from bottom? Both. So typically what I would like to do is I'll start from the bottom and work my way to the top, like in Photoshop. So I'll start with a base layer. Maybe we want to add a gradient. And this gradient, which by the way, this is one of the new changelog things that's really cool. So gradient settings, we can, in addition to the image pick that we had before, we can actually customize the gradient however we want, which is nice. So let's say on the steeper slopes, if we were to click this guy here, if we were to click on this one, we can change the selected color. Let's change this to something pretty dark. And let's change this one to maybe something a little bit brown. And for this gradient, we can go, let me pull this out just a smidge. There we go. That way we can see it a bit better. We can see this gradient distribution. So click the plus, and remember these noises before? Let's see what billow looks like. You can kind of see some of the dark areas here. Let me go back to the gradient. Let me pull the dark area closer to the light area. There we go. We can see this noise. So let's change this. Yeah, let's change this noise to be, let's try this one. All right. Let's try and find a good one that works out nicely. Not that we have to, but I'm going to mix and match here just a little bit. Phaser. All right, this one's kind of cool. So phaser, let's do the amplitude a little bit stronger. Frequency higher. All right. Ooh, that looks pretty good. All right, so this is pretty nice, but we're also going to merge this with a new gradient distribution based on the terrain. Let's see what rocks does. All right, rocks is good, but we will also add one more because I want to do it based on slope. We want to basically merge. We want to subtract slope. There we go. All right, so now that we've got that, we can see what it is. All right, that's sort of the gradient part. Now let's distribute based on the actual color as a whole. So the gradient distribution settings here will only control whatever the gradient is doing. Actually, let's remove that slope. I just like this gradient alone. Now let's distribute it based on the terrain itself. So I'm going to add a slope distribution for the terrain. There we go. So now this one, let's paint it in that rocky area. Let's do 75. Zero there. So you can see the slope everywhere in here is where I want this rock to be, but we will make this color a little bit more, a little bit dark, a little bit darker. All right, now let's add the other two colors back. So that's one area. So we can start there to do the cliffs, even though that's not a great representation of cliffs. Actually, let's do one more slope because I want to remove the steepest parts. And 85, 2. And then we will subtract. There we go. Let's make this slope range a little wider. There we go. And then now for the whole distribution for that gradient, we can change its opacity a little half. So it's not, or maybe, wait, did I change that right? Yeah, let's do it about half. Maybe a little more. So it's not as strong. So we can see we've got a few different colors here merged together. So it's not nearly as strong. So this is what I would do. I would start from the ground up and then snow. I would basically do the snow just so that I can, the snow simulation just so that I can see where the snow is occurring like this. And that way you can design the snow sim around that. Can you add edge of terrain near river and depth of terrain changes where we go to that? Yeah, you sure can. Very nice, very nice. Gotcha. All right, let's add, here's the simulation for the lake here. And one thing that we can do for a lake, like I said before, is add a shape layer, do a polygon. And let's add a polygon. So shift, let's add one right here, shift and left mouse. Of course, this is quite drastic. Let's do something a little less drastic. So let's make the height a little higher. Let's see, height offset outside. Here we go. So we can raise this lake up just a little bit. And what I want to do is let's add some, so the outside settings, inside settings. I think the inside settings need to not have any height to them, especially if we want to make it, let's do this. Let's add another node here, add more nodes, and we can control this lake a little bit more. Let's go to matte cap. So you can kind of see what's happening here. Let's do, so fall off for the outside, you can see how sort of strict it is. If I were to increase this, that fall off range is widening out. But I only want to say do 50 meters so we can make it pretty tight right here in the middle. The noise strength, this is what's going to control the noise of the perimeter of this. So even though that this polygon is pretty straight, and this is lakes, we're kind of going out of order a little bit. So this is an example of a lake. So if we remove the fluid simulation, you can see this is sort of what the polygon is going to be doing on its own. So we want to start with the outside settings first and then go to the inside. So say we want this lake to be deeper. Obviously the inside settings, height offset, we will reduce this. And let's see, fall off curve. Hold on, let's do the fall off is 0 meters. There we go. So our height offset is pretty big. There we go. Height offset this a little bit lower. Obviously, I think I know what's happening is the erosion is filling in. There we go. This advanced erosion wide is filling in my my lake. So we have a pretty big lake here, obviously. Yeah, so we have this lake that's moving in here. So let me add this back up a little bit. And if we were to reduce the inside, there we go. Outside, there we go. So the outside, if I were to raise the outside of the polygon pretty high, and the inside, you can see I can control the inside and the height offset of the whole thing as a whole. So, but we'll just make it deep and then maybe not make this lake as deep. There we go. And then we'll just go ahead and add a simulation of the water back in. So that's one example of how we could probably do the lake. This is a terrible example because I think the height offset's pretty extreme. Jeez. How can I flatten specific areas? All right, so you can, if you want, you can add a filter, add set. And let's say for the distribution of this, we want to be, yeah, we want it to be all the way. Let's see. So add set's really cool for the distribution. If we were to choose a layer, we can either do it based on a mask, or in this case, I'm going to do it based on that polygon that I just made. But I have to choose the polygon. There we go. Inner factor, let's see, outer factor range. There we go. So that's pretty sharp. You can see now that polygon is really strong now. So let's add that up. Ooh, we have to make sure the height offset. There we go. So if I want it to be super flat, there's things that you can do for add sets. One of them, you could also, if you really wanted to smooth it out a whole lot, you could do a denoise. You can distribute that noise based on the polygon that we have here. But I think my polygon, I went and, yeah, there we go. So denoise works. So now I have this lake. If I were to go back here, this lake is now colored in. We'll do a distribution for our lake color, not just based on the simulation, but we will do it based on a layer and polygon. We'll do it an add. So now everywhere where that polygon is, we will do an add. Oh, it didn't do it. Oh, I didn't choose the polygon. There we go. Let's do outer factor as 0. So now here is the exact polygon shape for painting that polygon, but we kind of want to blur the edges just a little bit, don't we? Maybe. That's pretty sharp. That's pretty sharp. Donka. All right, let's go back to what we were doing here. All right, let's get rid of the polygon. So simulation, yeah. There we go. So these this little water of the simulation is looking pretty nice, I think, but I'm gonna increase the fluid simulations spawn amount. So we can add a little bit more to it. And that one trick that I did about painting the this blue here just a little bit differently. If I add a color, we'll make it white. Distribution, we will choose layer, simulation, choose the simulation layer fluid, And then for a distribution, we'll choose noise. And I think I probably chose billow. Yeah, and for that billow, we also chose maybe I didn't choose billow. Oh, let's see. I actually did effects. This is a lot of trial and error for sure. Yeah, direction, strength. There we go. And subtract. Well, I didn't do it either. Oh, what? Hold on. It's kind of hard to see what this color is. There we go. All right, so we have it based on the simulation. We will, okay, so we have, perfect. So we need to do a noise layer, billow. All right, and then we will subtract it. There we go. I don't think it was billow. It was probably, I can't even remember which one it was now. But you get the idea. Maybe Garber. Okay, so here's a good one we could probably see. Yeah, so if we make this one white, you can kind of see, maybe we make this blue a little bit bluer. And then for this Garber one, if we were to, let's see what subtract is. It just does it in reverse. If we were to do, try to find the edges of that, make it look like a little wavy. And then also if we wanted to simple flow that, we can blend that edge a little bit. Also, one thing that I like to do for sure is even on the edges of this snow simulation here, which is this one. All right, so we have, there we go. We have distributed based on slope. But even for the simulation, if we wanted to add an effect, say we want this to not be as blocky, but we don't want to adjust the snow sim. If we were to click the, if we were to click effect plus and do something like simple flow, we can stretch that stuff down. Maybe we pull it up, stretch it in the other direction. So here's strength 0. If I were to do strength 1, you can see we're really stretching, stretching that snow quite a bit. All right, so now let's go back to the, I'm going to start a new project just to showcase the rivers real quick. All right, and this is kind of one of the main bigger things that I wanted to touch on. So for shape layers, plus we'll add a river system. Perfect. So what I want to address here is, so the river system has a little bit of, I guess, confusion on how certain things cut the terrain. So the river system procedural aspect, like these generator settings here, everything within the generator settings category is all of the procedural element to creating the rivers. So if it doesn't cut through a mountain like you wanted to, you'll have to manually make it cut. If you've added filters, sometimes things like thin flows, or if you've done fill soft up to a certain point, it can fill that in, but sometimes it doesn't, depending on the filters you have. Like especially, I think a lot of erosion, like soft flows. So for example, you see the river up here is not as prominent as the river down here. That's because the filter is taking more precedent over the river aspect, and the filter is guiding, the river. If you don't want the this erosion to basically affect your river, then you'll have to, under distribution, go distribution, layer, rivers, choose the river, and then hit, it'll probably have to be an effect, an inverted effect like that. Yeah, so we will do that, add, and then for, you'll have to invert that effect so that you can have more river. Basically, it's not much. I think it's about to crash right here. Yep. All good. 1 second, guys. Let me load that back up. Can we watch the live stream later? Yes, you certainly can. Immediately once the live stream is over, it will be available for you to watch. No problem at all. The reason why I'm bringing it over to another monitor is because I have some projects you can't see part of my samples. Let's go back to shape layers, rivers. All right. So one thing I always like to be assured of is where the sea level is. So this generator is going to basically path everything to wherever the sea level is. Right here, if I want the sea level to be 50 meters, I'll say it's 50 meters. Rebuild the rivers, and now you see this river stops around 50 meters, roughly around 50 meters. So, and this is the point to where, hey, if I wanted to add that simulation layer of fluid, we'll have a simulation layer here, hide the mask, and we'll just increase the spawn amount of this simulation. And now you basically have a river that is flowing into this flat area. Can we bring the world building into Houdini or Maya? You mean for taking a world creator project into Houdini or Maya, or can we bring the world building series that I'm doing into Houdini or Maya? I don't see why both couldn't be an option. Well, I know that you can take a world creator landscape into Houdini and Maya. But if you'd like this world building series to basically do a Houdini coverage or a Maya coverage, I don't see why not. I don't have Maya, so I'll have to see about that. I haven't really had an interest in Maya as much as Cinema 4D or Blender. So those will more likely be the ones, but I don't see why we couldn't do a Houdini stream if that's something you're interested in. I want to bring the project into Houdini. Okay, yeah, you can certainly bring in the project into Houdini and Maya. I don't know if there is a bridge tool for those. I can't remember, but you would just have to export things manually from World Creator, import them manually into those applications. All right, let's remove the simulation layer and go back to rivers. All right, the one thing that I basically like to do primarily for the generated tools is just the sea level. You could use the global sea level. I don't really do that for the most part. It depends because I like to have a little bit more custom control. Most of this other stuff, the branching, max lake depth, all slope multiplier, all this stuff, these are some general settings that I don't usually touch. But I'll explain real quick what, like branching, you may decide to do this, and this is going to add more, it's going to spawn more streams for branching. So if I were to rebuild the rivers, you can see more basically branches off a little bit more generatively. If I click edit, we can see here's all of our spawn points or all of our streams that are spawning, and we can move these around however we want. You see the stream is now cutting into this mountain. So that's based on the height of this particular node. If you want to adjust the height of this particular node, you can see it right here. It says adjust node height. But one thing I wanted to make sure everyone understands is what the parentheses on all of these shifts are. Look at this direction from the top down. Adjust upstream nodes is shift. So if you were to select this node right here, hold shift, and then what is it? Adjust node height, hit alt, click, and then wrong button. Click. I am now adjusting every node from this point up because I am holding shift, alt, and then left mouse click and dragging up or down. But if I want to control just this one node, which I've done many times, you don't hold shift. The shift is for controlling everything upstream. So for adjusting a node height, you just use alt, So Alt, click, and drag. So I can now adjust this one individual node. Additionally, each and every single one of these nodes is adjustable here on the left. You can change its flow multiplier. So if I want to, let's move this over here. If I want to increase the flow amount from this point down, so say that someone is pumping a lot of water into this node, we can increase the flow amount of this particular one point. If I were to reduce it, see the width is also changing a little bit, but you see as I'm changing that flow amount, it's also changing the flow, everything downstream. Look right around here when I change this flow multiplier. You see, so this is a flow multiplier from this point down. You can also change the type of river this is. So there's different river types, and we'll get to that in a little second because you can control the river type, river editing in general here on the right, but each node has its own river type. For example, springs are typically going to be mountain or mountain steep, depending on the elevation and depending on the slope of the mesh. Nodes here on the side, still says mountain steep. If I get down here to this one, it says floodplain, so it's going to be flatter. Each one of these river types has different categories for how wide, how deep, how much the river sort of moves around. So say, for example, we wanted this one to be a floodplain. And if we were to increase its flow multiplier, maybe we want this one to be a little wider. You can see it's a little wider. Maybe we want this one to be a little deeper. So we can adjust each individual node, even without having to increase the node height. Increasing it and decreasing the node height is going to move the terrain everywhere around it by a given point. And that point is based on the valley width. If I want no valley, no floodplain, if I want basically no walls, if I want the river width to be the main thing, well, that's what that's going to be. You can see now it's doing this weird little curve. That's not too bad. So say this particular stream is really cutting in to the mountain. And so sometimes you want to put this node over here. You like how this is. So if you add and click anywhere on this the spline here, it's going to add a node based on it's going to be based on whatever the last settings is between this node and this node. So I clicked somewhere in the middle range. So let's say it's not adding any additional flow to it. The river depth, all these settings are going to be about the same as it was the last time you edited. So you can really decide how to carve different aspects. Back over here, if I were to stop editing, back over here, we have the river shape and valley shape. River shape is everything, just like the polygon shape layer, everything within the river bank is going to be controlled by the river shape. So and these are global settings, by the way. So if we want to globally increase the width of every one of these, we can do it pretty staggering. I have even done something like this. So having the river be a little bit more smooth and a very shallow river here. So you can kind of see how sharp the river bank is. Maybe you want it to not be so deep, so it's a little bit more subtle. And keep in mind, this river here, this little river may look small. Let's do something, but look right here, my cursor is 67 meters and 64 meters. From here to here, that's 3 meters. It's a little over 9 feet in depth. And as you go up a hill or up a mountain, that river will turn into a creek. So the difference sometimes is less than a meter. So you have to think that's one reason why when you add erosion and stuff, the detail from this river will be lost. But you can at least, with materials, if I were to add a color, let's say red, go to the textured rendered view, distribution, layer, rivers, select the river. You can see, you can at least add a you can at least paint the river based on what you want, even though that the terrain may not be pushing in as much based on what you perceive. Let's see. Yeah, they're still working on optimizing how exporting is. One thing I wanted to make sure you understand, and definitely if you haven't, Piano, go back and watch the first two live streams closer to whenever we do the export material aspects to this, because what I like to do is say, if I want to export just a splat map of this river, I will hide, well, this is a bad example. Let's say we do color green, distribute this based on slope. All right, say I want to export just the green as a texture in the export functions. So I would just go to splat map, and this splat map single texture. And then what it's going to do now is I want to turn off color 1 and color 0. So the only color you see on the terrain is the green, despite the rest of the terrain being white. It's not going to be white. If I were to export this, everything that's green is going to be white. Everything that's black is going, or everything that's white in this case is going to be black. And then use that splat map, the texture elsewhere. And you would do this individually. So select color 1, the rivers, export as well, and you'll export a splat map just of this. So that's how the splat map works. If you have every one of these selected, mind you, then you will export a splat map of color 2, export a splat map of color 1, and one of color 0, and it'll export all individually, especially since you've got the single channel selected here. If you do not have these single channels selected, all three of these materials will be put in a packaged splat map. So the R channel will be color 0, the B channel will be color 1, and the G channel will be color 2, which is interesting enough because this is quite literally RGB. What's up, Renix? Welcome. Glad to see you here. The first part of the stream, we did a whole lot of snow simulations, which was really cool. We're going to be doing that a little bit. Oh, yeah, of course. Piano, that last stream, or the first streams that I did in this world building series, really guides you step by step on the exporting process of the materials as well as the height maps. The reason why right now, why you would want to export each one of these individually like I just did, is so that the splat map doesn't remove the underlying information of the previous color. So for example, right here, you see this green color is over top of the red color. If you export all of these together, it's only going to export what you see is what you get. So the splat map that's generated for color 1 will have a void right here because there's a little green snippet that's right here. If you want to have manual control of this outside of this program, you'd have to just export all of these one at a time. That's sort of a little unfortunate aspect of exporting right now, but they've said it's in the pipeline for having a splat map be able to choose, hey, there's options here to choose which material, which filter you want to export. Yeah, of course. Oh, I'm glad to see you're doing well. I'm glad to see you here. I'll definitely go back and rewatch some of the stuff that we've done before. All right, so back to rivers. All right, so we talked about branching, which is adding more variation. So if I were to rebuild, mind you, if you've done edit and adjusted some of these nodes, if you click, this is a big warning, if you re-click rebuild rivers after you've already done manipulation to all of these nodes, it will regenerate the entire thing to where it was. So don't make that mistake like I have. And so again, these are also some slope multipliers. So if it's on a steep slope, it'll increase or decrease the effect that it has on a slope. Max lake depth, increasing this, regenerating If there is some low-lying areas or low-lying, like for this floodplain, depending on what your floodplain is, it could increase or decrease the depth of that plane. But the really big thing is, like I don't mess with these much because I like to do my own custom branching. So all of these settings to me don't really mean much. I just keep them at their defaults because they're not going to affect what I truly want to do, which is basically do all the custom shaping. Curve, let me just zoom in right here. Curve amplitude, if I were to lower, this is also, like I said, the river shape and valley shape here is all global. It affects every river, every stream, every valley. So you see this is really spindly, which maybe if we go over here, it looks a little easier to see. It's a little spindly. So here's the amplitude, increases the noise of each one of these nodes. So the curvy aspect of these is based on what node has, like floodplain will be a little bit more curvier than a mountain steep. See here, this one is selected. Mountain steep has hardly any curve to it because it's assuming that it's a steep mountain. Mountain's a little bit, gentle slope, valley, braided, multi-threaded. Floodplain has more swooshes, meandering, which is a really good one because it sort of broadens out the playing field, and flat. If I were to just do flat, increase this, increase that a little bit. See, it's not really doing a whole lot there because of the river depth. All right. The other thing that's here is curve repetition. So let's end this. Repetition basically says how often the amplitude is going to be repeated. So if I were to just, you can see slightly increase this, the waviness of this is going to get just a little bit more. Or if we want it to be very, very repetitive. And this is all depending on what your landscape is. I mean, you can customize this however you want. And the valley, if I were to go to the fast texture mode and then set this one to black so we can see it. All right, the valley, as you can see, is this band around the river. I don't think the valley settings are quite there yet because the width of the valley, if we were to increase this, is better. But when you have the valley that's pretty sharp, it does that. Wall shape. The wall shape of the valley, basically, let me go back to matcap. Yeah, the wall shape is just how, if there's any wall shape on how sharp that valley boundary is. Breakup is adding a noise to the valley edge. So you can see it's adding noise to the valley edge here, which is probably a bit more realistic. Yeah. And a wall shape that's pretty wide. Floodplain is how, of course, that's pretty wild. Floodplain is how broad the valley is. So how you can see it's widening out. But I really wouldn't mess with this too much unless you only have a few rivers, because it's going to get really messy. And floodplain flatness, if you don't want it to be super flat, just remove it altogether and it's not going to be that flat. A lot of the times what I do, valley shape is really good at if you've got designed one good river that's going to cut through the terrain as a whole. But sometimes I will remove the valley altogether and let the river shine, especially if you're importing a height map and you're wanting to add rivers to an existing height map. Hey, Dolacrane, welcome. Especially if you want to add a height map, or if you want to add rivers to an existing height map, it's best to remove the valley altogether, have valley do nothing, and have the river be what's going to guide everything. So if I want to, what I like to do is come through here, clear the springs. I like to create my own springs. So shift click And with this particular stream selected, generate stream, and you can see what they do one at a time. So if I were to pull this down, so I'm holding Alt, clicking and dragging, pulling this down, you can see sometimes I'll make the stream up here something like gentle slope or flat, so it can be a little flatter, and then I'll widen it out. You can see I've widened that out some. I can make it pretty deep. See, floodplain, you can adjust the floodplain and valley width for each individual node here, but I'm not doing that. As well as if I select this node, if I want the curve amplitude to be quite drastic for this one. Repetitions will be anything from this node down. You see here. So it's adding no repetitions, but it's just sort of a multiplier for all the repetitions going downwards. And say, for example, I want to add another spring. I will shift click right here, select this spring, generate stream. If you click build from springs, it's going to delete your spline and it's going to generate from both springs. Just like if you clicked rebuild rivers over here on the right, it's going to delete everything that you did custom-wise and regenerate everything from scratch. So generate stream. And then this stream, depending on where it's at, will merge back into this system. If you want to say add a node here and you want to pull a node off or pull a stream off, you can add, let's say add connecting node. So shift control, click and drag. I just did that to command shift control, left click drag. So this one, if we select this one and generate stream, it'll move itself back up to the top. Maybe I don't like what this one's doing. What's this one? Mountain steep. Let's move this node somewhere in the middle, add a few more, see what this does. And now for this, I'm going to click generate stream, and it deleted those in the mix. So if you're going to add a few of these nodes like I'm doing here, it's best to just raise them or lower them depending on what you want. And the more nodes you select, say there's a waterfall right here. Yeah, say there's a waterfall from this point down to this point. This guy, we could widen it out, sort of like a catch basin for this waterfall. So the tighter you have these together, this one I'll say is probably not wide at all. That way, yeah, waterfall from this point down. Perfect. I'm late, but I'm here. Hello, hey, Mark. I thought you were here earlier. That's okay. You'll have to definitely go back and watch the snow stuff. It's pretty, pretty good. So that's essentially what I like to do with rivers is I will go through and create several custom ones, and based on what the settings are, I will adjust each and every one individually based on my design. Of course, I don't have Valley working here. See, now Valley is making a big impact on everything. So the Valley, if with Valley settings, you can, it's kind of a give and take. It's a lot of adjusting to see what exactly you like, but it's a simulation. So even that. Maybe break that up some. There we go. Maybe for this node right here, we want to make it wider and slightly deeper, just like that. And out here, maybe this one is a floodplain, and maybe its repetition, or maybe its amplitude is really wide, like that. River width. Now, sometimes rivers will leave an impression based on history. So if I do another spring right here, generate this spring, sometimes I'll take this node Sorry, I will, yeah, sometimes I'll take this node and I'll overlap areas like this. Because water has an interesting way of changing over time. So if you did multiple rivers together, or especially if you look at the Mississippi, because reference is key, you'll see that rivers will spline together sometimes. So now this one of these rivers, probably this one right here, will be what controls the water. But this one still has rocks and stuff, or has some sediment because that's where water was. But then between erosion and natural occurrences, weathering has quite literally weathered that out. What do you do to see the water in the river? So that's basically just all with the, if I were to choose a color, let's make this color blue instead, so it's a little bit more natural looking. Under distribution, we choose that we want to distribute based on a layer, because we have 3 different categories here. So layer, rivers, and then I chose which river I want, which basically if I were to say, here's river A, for the distribution level, or under the distribution of rivers, I've just chosen river A, and I can then see where that river is. All right, so it's also painting the valley. You don't have to do that. So for rivers, under valley strength, you can turn the valley up or down. So here's the range at how strong or not strong you want the valley to be. Same thing for the, let me lower this. Same thing for the rivers. River strength, if you want it to be a little bit less, a little bit more. Or the range here, basically, let me do this at 0.75. It all has to do with the bank. So here's a really steep bank. How far from the center point of the spline that creates the river do you want it to paint the river from the center to the bank edge? So if I were to do this at like 0.99 something, it's going to get even closer to the center of that river. And then now you've got your bank, you can texture however you want. So we can do another color, put that underneath the river. We'll make this one sort of like a really odd brown green color. We'll say this is distributing also based on the river, and choose river A. But instead of river strength, we could do, well, we'll still need the river. Based on, we want the valley strength. But man, that valley is pretty, that valley's too strong. So we could do river strength as well. So now we have an actual river in the middle and then river strength on the outside. We can even expand this. So say we want to expand this beyond the bank. Let's do effects. Sorry, let's do effects and fast flow. Let's do something distortion maybe. That's really interesting. So we can distort on a very small scale and then take that distortion and we can blur it a little bit if we want. Slight blur strength, and we can also take that and maybe we can do fast flow. So even sort of stretch that out just a little bit more. So there's different things that we can do for painting. So you don't have to have that river be the entire river. It can be however you need it to be there. All right, so let's real quick do something real fun. So let's do simulation. Let's make this water be close to a snow color. Let's make a distribution also based on layer. Simulation. Sorry, did I do? Fluids. Yeah, so the simulation, oh, it needs to add. There we go. Let's move this simulation over here. And let's make that simulation spawn level increase. Sorry, not that one. Not spawn level, spawn amount. There we go. Perfect. And we will there we go. We'll make that fill in a little bit nicer. And then let's go ahead and add a snow simulation, because why not? Snow sim. I think we did everything thus far. The only thing I haven't touched on was beaches. But I think beaches specifically are going to probably have to be saved for a dedicated stream. Change this to 0.5 maybe. And then for the snow simulation, we'll just call this one snow. Water. For snow, we will, let's reduce the overall temperature of the precipitation just maybe. No, this one perhaps. It's a fine line between what you want to do here. All right, actually, let's just add more snow, because why not? And see, melting controls both the, there we go, both control the powder and unstable parts of the snow that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, we can adjust some of these factors that I mentioned before, but what I want to do now is, so we have some snow. It's fine. Let's see. Ooh, that is super subtle. Let's see, melting strength is about right there. There we go. And maybe we don't want, yeah, maybe we will do the sun angle here. All right, next I want to basically cut off the 90 degrees like I did before. So distribution, terrain, slope. We will subtract this slope, and anywhere between 90 and let's say 85 with a range of 2. We can kind of cut some of that off a little bit. Another thing I like to do is just add some snow in general, and I will add, for this, it's just sort of like my own custom sort of flaky snow that happens here or there, but we will distribute it. We can distribute it based on the sun angle. Instead of that sun angle, we will invert it to be on this, everything that's on the outside of the sun. But we will also distribute it based on the terrain's cavity. So anywhere where it's concaved. So if we were to do this, and it crashed. Well, I'm working on a build that's not quite fully stable. So it's still a little bit unstable for me right now with heat maps specifically. All right, let me open up and see that, because we're almost done, because I wanted to really showcase the rivers and the, let's open up this one. I really wanted to showcase the river adjustments and the snow filter, as well as creating lakes. The lakes we did with polygons, as well as the simulation layers. For beaches, it's basically just, which I can touch on another time. Nothing to see here, move along. Yeah. So for this one, for example, like I said, I will make this available to everyone in the in World Creators Discord, but let me expose all of these to show you what I did real quick. So let's turn off all of this stuff, as well as the rivers, simulations, and simulations. All right, so this is what I started out with. Of course, it's a gray color right now. All right, I don't think I changed yet. Still the classic. So we added a regular erosion wide, a rocky hard to kind of make the rocks a little bit more bold. And then the last thing I added was the hydraulic sediment. And I didn't do anything with these settings. So these 3 filters are just the base settings. I didn't worry about covering those. The first simulation was the snow simulation. As you can see, if I were to, that's the wrong snow, this snow. Here's the snow simulation. And we can go through, I can, you know, in the description kind of showcase a little bit some of the settings that I did, but I think these base settings were fine. For this distribution, let's do, yeah, so here was the base snow simulation, which is really nifty. It fell through just perfectly. I think, I don't know the avalanche probability if I were to remove that. It added a little bit, but not much. I think most of it was, let's see, this is 0. It's 100. Oh, it's my rest angle. Oh, it's more over here. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. I wasn't letting it render out in time. I think I changed some of the temperatures or melting strength. Most of this is kind of the same. But with the snow, the simulation turned out fine. But like I did before, I edited a few things. So I also added the fluid simulation. And I painted snow based on that fluid simulation to make these two lakes. I also added rivers. And I customized these rivers. So like I did before, I added the springs where I wanted them, generated them, and I did some manipulation with the nodes to kind of piece them where I wanted. They didn't do a whole lot. If I were to turn off the second simulation layer, you can see here's the river. It comes right through here, but the filters will generate however they need to generate the river but that's not what you're there to do. I like the fluid simulation to pop on top of all of that. Let's stop editing, go back here. And I also painted the rivers. I didn't mind the feathering of the valley in this case, but I did also reduce it from the slope. So you can see the slope here. It's been exited from that. If I don't want the valley strength, I can just reduce the valley strength just a little bit more. And now, so the rivers I have just painted as all snow, assuming that because it's water and some of the snow comes down that river, it's painted it a little bit. But you can edit that out, no problem, by height or by slope. And that's pretty much it with the snow, I think. Yeah. And I just went through and added a gradient. This gradient has some gradient distributions on steepness, as well as distributed it based on rocks. You'll get to see that. This color, oh yeah, this was my snow color that I added. So this is based on the sun direction, as well as multiplied that based on a slope. So only between 43 and 73 degrees, and based on the inverse, nope, it's based on the sun direction. It will populate the, oh, there is a sun. So the sun direction, the inverse of the sun direction. Yeah, so wherever there's shadow, these little bits of snow that I've put in, because I think some snow will still be residual around there. And here's one thing that I really like to do with this blue. So I did the snow and I did the blue on top of the snow, and it was the blue that I had the distributions in. So I had simulation. Yeah, I did the snow based on the simulation, and I pulled that simulation in by 0.5. So if it was at 0 for this blue, did I even change that? Oh, I did. Oh, I know what it is. It's that color up there. So 0.55. There we go. So this is the one that added that icy color. So I have this color here based on distribution from simulation of the sediment. And I added a new white. I also based this white on the simulation of that sediment layer, but I added a ridged noise effect on top of that. So that's what gave that this little striky appearance throughout, so that blue wasn't a solid color. It just broke it up just a little bit. This is World Creator. Is this very clear to understand how to do it? Yeah, of course. I like to think so. All right, I think that pretty much covers, go back to my notes, everything that I wanted to touch on today. I wasn't intending on showcasing a whole lot of the snow, but I really wanted to wait on the snow to come in because it kind of works with water simulations and stuff. Yeah, we touched on snow, a little bit of ice. Like I said, I created this ice look just by adding a white snow color and choosing some noise textures to be on top of that. How would you add a realistic stream color for warmer clients? I think that would come down to, instead of you would just, well, you could base a gradient if you wanted to. And I think for when you're going to do, if you're going to do it in World Creator, you could just do it with a gradient like this and then choose something that's like a, most of it is kind of going to be it depends on what the surrounding area is. If you've got a forest, that water is not blue. Water's going to be murky with either sediment or it's going to be murky with rocks. The trees are going to reflect color off of it. So it's going to be a variation of colors. But you can make any number of gradient that you want and base that gradient off of well, I don't think rivers is the right one here. Let's do, I haven't even tested this out. Actually, I don't think rivers is going to do. Let's do based on a purlin noise. And then make this purlin noise frequency really high, I guess. Yeah, frequency really high. Let's see what amplitude of 0 does. Nothing. All right, so let's go back to amplitude of 1. And then we can distribute this whole thing based on the river. If we didn't do if we didn't do that white. So it's not quite, it's not coming in as best as I wanted it to, is it? Oh, I didn't even choose a river. Pff, there you go. And then we can probably darken this up some. So brightness. Yeah, so there needs to be some variation probably to the color. There we go. So rivers, let's make the valley nothing and increase this river's range to about 0.5. So there needs to be some level of variation for a warmer climate, I think. It's kind of like a greenish blue color if you had it in a warmer climate. If it's a desert environment, it's probably going to reflect some really warm tones. If you, and I'm going to do beaches on another time because I'm running out of time today. But essentially for beaches, you can do the snow simulation for sand, or you can do a sand simulation or fluid simulation. But I typically like to just have beaches be custom. You can even do at this point, you can do let's see, a curve. Have a curve preset for ocean. Yeah, let's pull this one down. Oh. Let's pull this out like that. Make the terrain 1/8 of a meter. All right, so this curve, actually, where's this one at? It's sort of a beach profile. Trying to think about it like that. What is this? 50 meters. So we can do a denoise terrain height. Do the height at 50 meters. Yeah, so 50 meters down, it's gonna denoise the whole thing a little bit. Maybe, yeah, denoise it a little bit. And what I'll do here, I guess I am doing beaches already. Let's do a sand color for what sand's below the water. Actually, let's copy this up here. Do a lighter sand based on the height. And we'll go from 50 to 100. Range of 2 on both. Ooh, that's not good. Let's do 55 to 2. Maybe 10. There we go. And then we'll do one more color. Say it's just the green color for fun. And this one, yeah, this one we will do from 60 up. And then maybe we add that distribution, also height from 60 up, something like that. Denoise, I think, needs to probably, where's this one at? Let's see what, yeah, we need to denoise quite a bit of it. But in essence, you could start on something like this, and this is going to crash it. Oh, it did not. All right, start on something like this. Terrain, water height, say it's at 50. Wait. Sea level is at 50. If you do 52, 55, nope. 53, yeah. You can kind of start to see we're getting somewhere with that. All right, this is basically all I have time for today. We've gone an hour, we've gone 2 hours, which is the cap that I was wanting to hold on to. So, is there any further questions before I end it? The next World Creator stream, I haven't picked a topic on it yet. I'd like to maybe do beaches and then export beaches, maybe do a whole tropical island design from start to finish for a change. So we'll design something from scratch in World Creator as an island, better than this. And then we'll export it to Unreal, add some palm trees and rocks and sand and all that stuff. Let's see what tool. World Creator. It would be really nice if you had proper Wacom oh yeah, Talent support. Yes, HDRI can be applied also using HDR map. Gotcha. Yeah, I think, actually, can you do that? Yeah. Renderings. No, environment. You can add an HDRI, can't you? But I can't remember where. Here it is. So environment map. So under render, environment map, if you were to add, I think this is where it's at. Yeah, if you were to add an HDRI right here, you could certainly do that. Render. I gotcha. Yeah, I've got it down pat. There we go. First island. All right. What would you suggest for exporting to Twinmotion? Okay. That is a great topic, and I'm actually going to be discussing that I'm supposed to be doing a live stream next week on Twinmotion, but I may have to push that out another week. All the streams I think are going to have to be pushed out another week. So I'm doing a Twinmotion live stream like this. I don't think it's going to be next week, but the week after next. And I'll be covering different types of landscape imports into that program, as well as surveys. Like if you have a survey of an area that you want to come into here, for example, in texture, you can import a height map into Twinmotion. So that's simple enough. You just go to export height map, and we can export this height map. I'll go through the settings and stuff like that. And you can import a height map into Twinmotion. The only caveat to Twinmotion for the terrain aspect is you can't import the terrain, like if you had a material for the terrain. So what you would have to do is just import a model. So what we're going to do is in here, we're going to model the terrain, export an FBX or OBJ of the terrain with its textures applied to it, all combined, and then import that into Twinmotion. So the terrain is a physical model as opposed to, because you don't really have to use Twinmotion's terrain features unless it's going to be flat, or if you're wanting to paint. If you're wanting to sculpt into Twinmotion, you can do that. So that's where you would do it. So I'm glad you're interested in Twinmotion, because you can expect a plethora of Twinmotion content coming real soon to the channel. So I hope that this stream today helps people see some of the how to do some of the rivers. That's one of the main things that I was really hoping to touch on, was rivers. And even though I didn't spend as much time on the rivers as I did the snow is just so fascinating, and it's part of the water simulation, I guess, the weather system. So if you guys have any questions, you can totally hit me up on the World Creator Discord that's specific to World Creator. If you have Unreal Engine questions, there's also an Unreal Engine server within the World Creator channel that you can ask questions for. And I will have this landscape for you guys in the samples location of that Discord real soon. I'm going to make some tweaks to this and do some renderings for it to kind of promote it a little bit more. But it's fantastic, and I really love the snow simulation. And you can also guarantee that there will be a few dedicated tutorials, not live streams, but a few dedicated tutorials for snow, specifically different types of snow effects. So there'll be one tutorial on teaching the snow simulation pipeline, and there'll be some other tutorials around snow on how to get certain outcomes. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, World Creator, for being here in the chat, and everybody, and I will see you guys on the next one.